So, first of all, let me thank you for all of the work that you have done on the George Henry White Center project. I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself, but just to set us off, I'm going to say that you have been a crucial participant in us being able to develop an eco-friendly toilet pilot project that we hope will be a real groundbreaking prototype for the southeastern area of North Carolina. But to begin with, do you think you could just introduce yourself, a little bit about your background, and how you got into engineering and so on?
Let's see. I grew up in construction in Raleigh, North Carolina. You know, got on a crew in like fifth grade and worked in the trades all the way through high school. After high school, I went to West Point and I got a civil engineering degree, and I ended up in the Corps of Engineers. That's all the memorabilia behind me. So I was active duty for 8 years, and during that time, I did a fair bit of construction. After I got out of the military, I was a contractor, and I built a 20-story condo down in Pensacola Beach, Florida. And I've been in North Carolina since back in North Carolina since 2007 as a structural engineer. I helped rewrite the building code that was supposed to be published in this year, but it got delayed. I was a past president of the Structural Engineers Association of North Carolina, so got a fair bit of experience and a kind of a broad breadth of experience in different types of construction. So that's how I got into engineering.
I believe you were introduced to our project by Ken Chestnut.
Kenneth Chestnut, that's right. I worked with Kenneth on a project at his church. They were restoring a bell tower that had been built by freed slaves right after the Civil War. So we got that restored and back in pretty good order.
Okay, so tell me, what made you agree to help out the George Henry White Center?
Quite honestly, my relationship with Kenneth. I know Kenneth. He moved back to North Carolina to help his community and to really, it's a kind of a labor of love for him to go around and to help our youth and to kind of work in disadvantaged areas. When he came and mentioned this to me, quite honestly, I was too busy to take the project on, but I told him that I would, because he was asking, I'd go ahead and do it and not charge y'all any money. It's a charitable project anyway. So doing Kenneth a favor, and I believe just with him being associated with it, I assume it's going to be for a very good cause.
So tell me, as an engineer, there must be an intention that you have or a goal that you have. What is your goal when you are working on any project?
Really to make sure we've identified the true needs of the project. There's no reason presenting a solution that's looking for a problem. So, you can get so wrapped up in what the solution is that you haven't identified the actual problem. I try to pride myself in solving the actual problem, keeping costs low. Money's a resource as well as everything else. I don't like to solve a problem with that's overly complicated. I also like for most of the money to be spent on stuff that's going to stay on site. So if it's a simple solution that works and is structurally overkill is probably cheaper than some real fancy answer. So, and you get more concrete and you get more wood and you get all those other things. I like to be able to sleep good at night, but at the same time, not make things overly expensive.
One thing about the George Henry White Center is that it's in a very rural area.
Yeah, I know the area. I do a lot of work out in the countryside of North Carolina. That's one thing that I do try to emphasize in my practice is going out and helping people in those underserved areas. That's the reason I was on the ad hoc committee to revise the building code. Everybody else was from Raleigh and Charlotte and Asheville. And I had to remind them that there was 97 other counties in North Carolina, and not all of them are doing quite as well. And if they wanted to add a lot of things to the building code, that was going to add cost. And that's fine in Raleigh, Charlotte, and Asheville that can support that, and probably Wilmington. But outside of those areas, a town might get one new building every 3 years. And adding these new rules and putting extra cost on was going to kill them. That's also why I do a fair bit of historic restoration projects. So I've got quite a bit out in rural areas of North Carolina, trying to help them get grant money to do the work, try to help them stretch their dollars. So I'm doing several historic projects right now, and what I've done on those is split them up into several contracts so that each contractor is actually self-performing the work he's doing. It's dropping the overall cost by about 30%, but it
Wow.
makes these projects possible in rural and underserved areas.
That is a very important and crucial issue. I wonder if, have you ever presented about this?
That wouldn't hurt my feelings any if I could get up and talk to them. I felt like I got up on my soapbox fairly often when I was helping with the building code, just reminding everybody that, yeah, you can't just gold plate everything and have people manage. So, but yeah, I'd be happy to. I've gotten up and presented a few times on other issues. Yeah, I mean, anybody can work on a project that's got a ton of resources and people. It's the small ones, I think, that are a bit trickier, not wasting time and not wasting money, and being able to do something that's actually useful out in the community.
That's so great. Well, one other purpose of this EcoJohn system has been to, well, we have the triple bottom line idea of people, planet, and profit. And so one of our purposes has been to kind of create a prototype of an incinerating toilet system that would preserve the land and preserve the water table, and at the same time show people how they might be able to have a little business, or use this in their local applications, rent it out, do whatever, but I just wonder if you have been involved in any environmentally oriented or land preservation oriented projects like this.
Not exactly like this. I've been involved in some stream restoration projects, trying to reduce flooding and open streams up. And we've kind of, and this is kind of an odd thing for a structural engineer to be involved in, but over the years, we try to make all of our waterways to where they're really big and they can hold these big flows. The problem is if it can hold a huge water flow at flood time, well, what's happening the rest of the time is all the water is going through really slow and it's dumping all its sediment. And those structures that should be able to hold a lot, now they're half full of dirt and they never get cleaned out. So you really need to right size everything so that on a fairly frequent basis, you're getting enough scour in the water to pick up these sediments and transport them along and keep everything open. And yeah, that means that the flood potential is higher, but on the ground level, you've got streams that are flowing properly at the proper volume velocity. You're cleaning everything out, and when you have these floods, and let's face it, stormwater systems are, especially streams and creeks in that part of the system, they're not touched. So we're in one small rural community where about at least a quarter of the town was turning into a swamp
Oh,
because they just hadn't touched the stormwater system for 40 years.
wow.
So we've put a program in there to do that. We dropped the water table about 7 feet back to where it was at the beginning of the century, 19th century, and it was as a pilot program that the Corps of Engineers was keeping an eye on to see how it works. So I have worked on environmentally relevant projects, and I'm an outdoorsman. I really like being out in austere areas. So I was just up in the Yukon a few weeks back in an area that you have to take 2 float planes and a 5-mile horseback ride to get to.
Oh my.
So yeah, I do, and I do definitely see the value in having something that, you can go and you can use the land and you can use these areas, but you're not leaving a lasting impact.
Great. That is so great. You mentioned right sizing and you also mentioned, um, you know, preserving,
Yeah, that's for the stream restoration work, and I don't design that. I'll help facilitate getting the right designers. I'll manage the project. There's other areas that I can work on with that stuff. My primary practice is structural engineering, and I have several specialties. So I do a lot. I already mentioned I do a lot of historic restoration. I do a lot of concrete repair. So if
hmm
you think of all the concrete buildings up and down the coastline,
hmm
nuclear plants, I work on those too with concrete repairs. I do a lot of marine design, piers,
hmm
wharves, waterway structures. That's what led to the stream restoration. It was more on the structural shoreline side that I do. I do a fair bit of maintenance design, but really I'm in the relationship business. A lot of my work is repeat. I mentioned I was in the Corps of Engineers,
hmm
and I was at Fort Bragg, and I was in charge of a lot of building maintenance and new structures. And what I got a distaste for very quickly was contractors and engineers that wanted to cherry pick our good projects
hmm
and leave us high and dry on projects that weren't as profitable or nice or convenient. So what I try to do in my practice is I try to be a one-stop shop if somebody
mm
wants that.
Right.
Um, but I have a lot of customers that they'll call me on a large range of engineering issues. If I'm not the right person for it, I can get them in contact with the right person. I can be their project manager and hire the right engineer or architect. I don't really like having someone come in and just send them away and say, no, I'm not the right person. Yeah, in a
Right.
lot of cases, I'm not the right person to do the design, but I would just throw them back out on the street to figure it out themselves when I know all the steps and I know all the right people. Like that stream restoration project that came up on the Lumbee River. That came up because I was working on a historic restoration project and they complained that their gardens have turned into a wetlands. And then we started talking about that and saw the problem in the whole town. And they couldn't get Corps of Engineer permits. In 2 weeks, we had Corps of Engineer permits for them.
Wow.
Then we went to the state and we got grant money to help address the whole issue. So then I hired a couple civil engineering firms to put all the design together. But I stayed the project manager, project lead for everything.
So in other words, you use your overall knowledge to help fit in people with the specific expertise for that
Sure.
particular
Yeah,
project.
you hear somebody's issues, their problems, and then you help them come up with a solution for their problems. Um, and this can be community wide. They can be for one person. They can be for an industrial plant. I have a lot of range in the types of customers I have. But if somebody brings me a small project, like on this one, Kenneth brought me a small project, but I know Kenneth. Kenneth is a good man. I like to work with good people, and small enough I didn't have to charge for it. It's for a good cause. So again, I didn't send him away and tell him I was too busy. I just figured out how to fit in and help out a little bit. I've done several projects in Bladen and Columbus County. There's a real shortage. I don't think there's more work going around right now. I think there's fewer people doing the work. But in
Yeah.
the areas that I work in, I've over the past 2 years, I think we're up to 10 structural engineers that have retired.
Oh,
Some of the work that I do, all the engineers involved in it have come out of retirement because there's no one that does the work. If somebody's willing to put in the work and can be on the practical side, there's a whole lot of work out there for someone to
uh,
be an engineer. Actually, I was supposed to go teach engineering at a college for a bit, and that kind of fell through. I had a West Point offered to bring me back and have me teach civil engineering,
oh, wow.
but timeline didn't work out when I was in the Army.
I'm so impressed with West Point and the academies because of the concept of leaders eat last
Yeah,
and the idea of honor, which has kind of not been focused on anywhere else, you know? And I just see it as
It
so
can be in
essential.
short supply. Leadership's in short supply. I think honor and integrity is in short supply. Engineers are in short supply as well.
Yeah.
But you
So
can't
you're,
be a structural engineer without integrity.
yeah,
It'd never work. So most structural engineers, the vast majority, over 95%, they'll either design buildings or they'll design bridges.
okay.
That's mostly what they do. They work for an architecture firm where they will work for a DOT and they will develop, bridges and culverts and that sort of thing. My practice is quite a bit different. There's a lot of range in structural engineering that most structural engineers don't know about. So I do design piers and wharfs and repairs to existing buildings, and there's a huge range, and I don't think very many structural engineers are acquainted with that. But yeah, most of them design buildings and work under the direction of architects. I don't know that I have any overarching goal or anything like that. I believe a lot of the reason why I work the way I do is because of my Christian faith. And that's why I care about communities. That's why I would, want to see underserved areas getting taken care of. That's why, I'm not out here really looking for the next place I can make money at. I'm really looking at what the jobs are. That's why I value relationships with people and helping them through all their problems and not, really worrying about myself. I think the selflessness part is something that is also in short supply these days. I think if people, if you're diligent at your job, if you care about other people, and you're not too worried about yourself, you don't take yourself too seriously. I think there's a lot more to life out there for you.
Again, I want to thank you on behalf of the George Henry White Center, the people of Bladen and Columbus County, all the volunteers who've been working at the center. And I just really hope that we can bring this to fruition. And when and if we do get everything all installed, set up, and hooked up, I would like you to be there at the opening ceremony.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.